Okay, get this. A single-celled organism
Uh-huh.
that looks like, a
Yeah.
paisley pattern under a microscope.
Wow.
It's called Paramecium,
Okay.
and we are taking a deep dive into its
Uh.
surprisingly complex world, specifically
Okay.
how it avoids obstacles and unfavorable conditions.
No.
We got some fascinating excerpts from a scientific text that are going to
Yeah.
blow your mind.
Okay, I'm ready.
Ready to learn?
Absolutely.
It always amazes me how much complexity
Right.
can be packed into a single cell.
Yeah, it's incredible.
Right. So
Yeah.
let's start with Paramecium's hood,
Okay.
their everyday environment.
Right.
Think ponds, streams,
Uh-huh.
sometimes even stagnant pools.
Oh, wow.
Not exactly a five-star resort.
Definitely not.
Right.
It's these environments are constantly changing, so temperatures fluctuate, salt concentrations
Yeah.
go up and down.
Right.
There's a constant threat of predators.
Oh.
And of course, they need to find food,
Right.
which for Paramecium is mostly bacteria,
Yeah.
so it's a tough life.
It's a high-stress job being a Paramecium.
Definitely.
Talk about a high-stress job. But here's the thing
Yeah.
that really blew me away.
What's that?
Paramecium uses electrical signals to
Oh,
navigate this challenging world.
that's amazing.
Like they have their own mini nervous system.
That's right. Like we usually associate electrical signals with
Yeah.
brains and nerves, but in
Uh-huh.
Paramecium, it's all happening within a single cell.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a prime example of how
Switch.
nature can find incredibly clever solutions,
Yeah.
even at the microscopic level.
So let's break down how this electrical wizardry works.
Okay.
The source material mentions these things called ions,
Uh-huh.
specifically sodium, calcium, and potassium.
Right, right.
What's the deal with those?
Well, ions are like tiny charged particles,
Okay.
and they play a crucial role. Uh-huh.
In creating these electrical signals,
Okay.
they're distributed unevenly
Yeah.
across the cell membrane, which is like
Right.
the outer skin of the paramecium.
So it's like a,
Think of it like a battery
yeah.
with a plus and a minus side because of this
Yeah.
uneven charge distribution.
Okay, I'm picturing a tiny battery-powered paramecium
Yeah,
zipping around its watery world.
exactly.
But how do these charges actually create signals?
That's where ion channels come in.
Okay.
These are like tiny gates embedded in the cell
Yeah.
membrane, and they can open and close,
Uh-huh.
allowing specific ions to flow in or out.
Okay.
This flow of ions creates electrical currents,
Right.
which is how the paramecium communicates and
Yeah.
controls its behavior.
So it's like the ion channels are controlling the flow of traffic
Yeah,
across the cell membrane, and that traffic creates the electrical signals.
a perfect analogy.
Gotcha. Okay, cool.
Now, let's imagine our little paramecium
Yeah.
swimming along and bumping into
Yeah.
something.
Say a bit of debris or
Yeah.
the edge of a plant.
Ouch, does it cry out in pain?
Not quite.
Okay.
But that bump, which is a mechanical stimulus,
Okay,
gets converted into an electrical signal.
gotcha.
Think of it like a
Yeah.
tiny sensor on the paramecium's surface.
Okay,
And here's where it gets even cooler.
all right.
The location of the bump matters.
Wait, so the paramecium knows
Yeah.
if it bumps its head or its tail.
You got it.
Oh.
There are different types of
Okay.
mechanosensitive ion channels at the front
Okay.
and back ends of the cell.
Yeah.
Let's say the paramecium bumps its back end.
Okay.
This triggers potassium channels to open,
Hmm.
allowing potassium ions to flow out.
Okay.
This makes the inside of the cell more negative in that area,
Right.
something called hyperpolarization.
So it's like a temporary shift in the battery's charge.
Exactly.
Gotcha.
And this hyperpolarization at the back end
Okay.
causes the cilia, those hair-like structures that help the paramecium swim to beat faster,
Got it.
propelling it forward. It's like a little boost to get away from whatever it bumped into.
Clever escape strategy.
Yeah.
But what happens if it's a head-on collision?
If the bump is at the front,
Okay.
a different set of ion channels open,
Mm-hmm.
this time letting calcium ions rush into the cell.
And since calcium ions are positively charged,
Right.
this would make the inside of the cell more positive.
Yes.
Okay.
This is called depolarization.
Okay.
And it triggers a much more dramatic response.
Ooh.
An action potential.
Action potential sounds intense.
It is.
What exactly is happening there?
Think of an action potential as a cellular alarm
Okay.
that goes off.
Okay.
It's a rapid, all-or-nothing electrical signal that spreads
Oh, wow.
throughout the entire cell, kind of like a ripple in a pond.
Oh, okay.
This wave of depolarization is
Yeah.
driven by voltage-gated calcium channels. Right.
Which open up in response to
Yeah.
the initial depolarization caused by the bump.
So it's like a chain reaction of electrical activity.
Precisely.
Okay, cool.
And this wave has a very specific effect
Mm-hmm.
on the paramecium's movement.
Does it make it do a backflip?
Not a backflip,
Okay.
but close.
Right.
The influx of calcium ions
Yeah.
causes the cilia to reverse their beating direction,
Uh-huh.
making the paramecium swim backward.
Wow.
It's like slamming on the brakes and reversing to get away from danger.
Amazing. So it's all about
Yeah.
controlling those tiny cilia with electrical signals.
It is.
But wait, there's more to this story.
There is.
Right. Obstacles aren't the only challenge
Right.
Paramecium has to deal with.
You're absolutely right.
Right.
Its environment is full of
Yeah.
fluctuating salt and mineral concentrations, too.
Oh, okay.
And those can be just as dangerous as a
Yeah.
physical barrier.
So how does Paramecium deal with that? Does it have like a tiny salt shaker it uses to test the waters?
I wish it were that simple.
Okay.
But just like with obstacle avoidance,
Uh-huh.
it all comes down to those remarkable ion channels.
Oh.
They have specific channels
Yeah.
for detecting and avoiding
Right.
high concentrations of sodium and magnesium ions,
Okay.
which can be harmful to them.
It's like they have a whole toolbox of specialized
Close.
sensors for different environmental threats.
Exactly.
It's amazing.
And just like we saw with
Well,
the pond mutants,
Yeah.
which lack the ability to
Mhm.
generate action potentials and can't avoid obstacles,
Yeah.
there are other mutants
Okay.
that highlight the importance
Oh, oh.
of these ion channels.
Right.
The fast-2 mutants
Mhm.
can't avoid high sodium,
Right.
and the eccentric mutants
Yeah.
are insensitive to high magnesium.
Right.
These mutants show how
Yeah.
specific genetic defects
Okay.
in ion channels
Uh-huh.
can make them vulnerable to.
These environmental hazards.
It really drives home
Yeah.
how vital these tiny channels are
Right.
for survival
Yeah.
in the microscopic world.
Yeah.
But after all this electrical excitement, the bump, the action,
Yeah.
potential, the escape, how does Paramecium
Right.
calm down,
That's a great question.
return to its normal state?
And it takes us to the recovery mechanisms.
Okay, I'm all ears.
After an action potential,
Yeah,
the cell needs to reset its electrical balance.
right.
Think of it like recharging the battery.
Okay,
It does this in a
Yeah.
few key ways.
tell me how the Paramecium chills out after all the drama.
Well, first, there are these voltage-sensitive potassium channels
Okay.
that quickly open
Ah.
after depolarization.
Okay.
Potassium ions flow out,
Right.
bringing the membrane potential
Yeah.
back down to its resting state, repolarizing it.
So potassium is like the chill pill
That's a great way to put it.
after all the calcium-induced excitement.
But there's more.
Okay.
There are also
Yeah.
calcium-activated potassium channels,
Right.
which act as a backup system,
Uh-huh.
providing additional repolarization as calcium levels rise inside the cell.
Double the potassium, double the chill.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And finally, we have transporter pumps,
Right.
which are like tiny molecular vacuum cleaners.
Okay.
They actively remove excess calcium
Yeah.
from the cytoplasm
Right.
using energy from ATP.
So it's a multi-pronged approach to recovery.
You got it.
Potassium channels restoring the electrical balance,
Right.
and pumps cleaning up the calcium mess.
But it does raise an interesting question.
Right.
Why so many mechanisms?
Yep. Now that you mention it, it does seem like overkill.
Right.
What's the evolutionary advantage
Oh.
of
That's
living
where
so many ways?
concept of degeneracy comes in.
Okay.
Having multiple, slightly different ways to achieve the same outcome
Right.
provides flexibility and robustness. Think of it like
Uh-huh.
having backup generators in a building
Right.
or multiple escape routes in case of emergency.
Yeah.
If one system fails,
Right.
there are others to compensate.
So it's like an insurance policy
Seriously,
for the paramecium.
degeneracy is a
Can always recover from
common feature.
in biological system,
Oh, okay.
ensuring resilience in the face of
Right.
changing conditions.
Yeah.
It's a testament to the power of evolution
Right.
to find multiple solutions to the
Mhm.
same problem.
Makes sense.
No.
Now, we've been throwing around this term ion channels a lot,
Yeah,
but they might seem kind of abstract.
Right.
Can you paint a clearer picture
absolutely.
of what these tiny gatekeepers actually look like?
Ion channels are essentially proteins
Okay.
that form pores through the cell membrane.
Right.
These pores are incredibly selective, only allowing specific types of ions to pass through. So the mechanosensitive channels discussed earlier are activated by pressure,
You're getting it.
while voltage-gated channels respond to changes in membrane potential.
And there are
Right. It's like they each have
also ligand-gated channels,
their own special trigger.
which open when a specific molecule,
Wow.
like a neurotransmitter, binds to them.
Okay.
It's a complex and fascinating world down there.
Yeah.
And what's truly remarkable is that ion channels are incredibly ancient.
Right.
We find them in bacteria, archaea, and eukaryotes,
Okay.
suggesting they've been essential for life since the very beginning.
From bacteria to brains.
Right.
It's amazing to think that these tiny channels are playing such a fundamental role.
Yeah, it is.
But speaking of brains, I can't help but wonder, how did Paramecium, a single-celled organism, evolve such a neuron-like signaling system?
That's a question
that has fascinated biologists.
A huge leap in complexity.
For a long time.
Yeah.
And the answer likely lies in the long and winding road of evolution.
Okay.
It's likely that ion channels initially evolved for much simpler functions.
Okay.
Like regulating osmotic pressure, the balance of water and solutes inside and outside the cell.
So you're saying these tiny channels...
This is crucial for single-celled organisms.
First evolved to help Paramecium keep its water balloon balanced.
Fluctuating environments.
From humble beginnings to electrical signaling.
Exactly. Over millions of years,
Okay.
these channels could have been duplicated and modified through random genetic mutations. Some of these mutations might have given rise to channels with new properties.
Right.
Like the ability to respond to different stimuli, such as a bump or a change in voltage.
So it's like nature was tinkering with the basic design.
But perfect analogy. Trying out new variations until it hit upon something.
Those new...
that gave Paramecium a survival advantage.
Improved ion channels.
Right.
Could then have been favored by...
The survival of the fittest on a microscopic scale.
Natural selection.
Wow.
Meaning that those Paramecia with the beneficial mutations were more likely to survive and pass on their genes.
It's amazing how such tiny creatures
over time
evolve.
This could have led to the evolution of
such a complex system.
A whole array of specialized ion channel.
Just to stay alive.
Each fine-tuned for a particular purpose.
Wow.
Like sensing obstacles, detecting changes in salt concentration, or generating action potentials.
Victories.
It's a beautiful example of how complexity can arise from simplicity through the relentless force of evolution.
It really is.
It's incredible to think.
It's incredible to think that all this complexity. The ion channels, the electrical signal.
The ion channels, the electrical signal.
The avoidance behaviors.
The avoidance behaviors.
All evolved within the confines of a single cell.
All evolved within the confines of a single cell.
Makes you wonder what other secrets are lurking.
You're absolutely right.
In the microscopic world, waiting to be discovered.
The world of single-celled organisms is vast and full of surprises.
I'm definitely feeling a newfound appreciation.
There's still so much we don't know about.
For the power of single cells.
How they sense their environment.
And be tiny.
How they communicate.
But they're capable of.
And how they've adapted to survive.
Some truly remarkable things.
Such a challenging world.
Well, I'm excited to learn more.
I couldn't agree more.
So where do we go from here?
Well,
in our deep dive into the amazing world of Paramecium.
We focused on
what other wonders are waiting to be explored.
How Paramecium avoids things. But what about how it finds what it needs?
Okay.
Next, we'll delve into its remarkable sensory world.
Okay.
Exploring how it detects food, avoids predators, and navigates its watery environment with a whole suite of senses we might not expect from a single-celled creature.
I can't wait.
It sounds like
we're about to uncover. Even more mind-blowing adaptations. So stay tuned, listeners.
Our deep dive
into Paramecium is just getting started.
And the Paramecium is just getting started.
I'm so excited.
Me too. Welcome back to our deep dive into the world of Paramecium.
We've been exploring how these single-celled organisms use electrical signals to navigate their environment,
right?
avoiding obstacles and harmful substances.
It's like they have a sixth sense on a microscopic level.
Exactly, and that's what I'm so curious about now.
Yeah.
We've talked about how they react to things,
Right.
but how do they actually sense their surroundings in the first place?
Yeah.
What are their senses like?
They don't have...
Do they have tiny little eyes and noses?
Well, not exactly eyes and noses as we know them.
Okay.
But they do have incredibly sophisticated ways of gathering information from their environment.
So spill the beans. How does Paramecium see its world without eyes?
They see through touch, primarily.
All right.
Their entire cell membrane is sensitive to mechanical stimuli, like bumps and pressure changes.
Right.
Those mechanosensitive ion channels we talked about earlier act like tiny touch sensors all over the Paramecium's body.
So it's like their whole body is covered in sensitive skin.
That's a great way to put it.
Wow, that's pretty cool.
When something bumps into the Paramecium, or it bumps into something, these channels open up, triggering that cascade of electrical events we discussed. Hyperpolarization, depolarization, and potentially even an action potential.
Fascinating. So it's constantly getting a touch reading of its environment.
It is.
But what about taste and smell?
Right.
How does it find food?
That's a great question.
On a nose or a tongue?
That's where chemoreception comes in.
Okay.
The ability to detect chemicals in their environment.
Okay, so it's like...
While we don't fully understand all the detail, it likely involves special receptor proteins on its cell membrane that bind to specific molecules.
So like little chemical detectors.
Precisely.
Okay.
For example, remember, Paramecium's main food source is bacteria.
Right, bacteria.
Scientists believe it can actually sense chemicals released by bacteria, allowing it to swim towards areas with higher concentrations of food.
It's like following a scent trail, but on a microscopic scale.
Exactly.
That's so cool.
What about other chemicals in its environment?
Yeah, can it sense those too?
Absolutely.
Wow.
It's sensitive to changes in the concentration of various ions like sodium, calcium, and magnesium, which can indicate changes in water quality or even alert it to potential threats.
Wow, so it's like they have a built-in water quality tester.
You could say that.
That's awesome.
And there's evidence they can even detect changes in temperature. Although the exact mechanisms are still being studied.
So even though it's just one cell, it has this whole sensory toolkit.
It really is.
Like a microscopic survival equipped to handle...
And this just highlights...
all sorts of environmental challenges.
The incredible adaptations
that
evolution has produced.
Yeah.
Allowing even...
It's pretty remarkable.
The simplest of organisms to thrive in their environments.
Okay, so we've got this single-celled organism that can sense its environment through touch, chemicals, and even temperature. But what's the big picture here? Why did Paramecium evolve such a complex system in the first place? It seems like a lot of effort. Something so small.
And it gets to the core of why we're so fascinated by Paramecium. All these adaptations ultimately boil down to one thing: survival.
Survival of the fittest, right? Only the strongest Paramecia survive.
Well, it's not just about strength.
Okay.
It's about being the most adaptable.
Right.
In Paramecium's world, every day is a struggle.
Yeah, sounds exhausting.
It can be. That's why those Paramecias with the most effective sensory and response systems were the ones who thrived.
So the ones who could best avoid danger,
the ones
find food, and navigate their surroundings.
Who could best avoid danger, find food, and navigate their surroundings.
So over millions of years, natural selection favored those Paramecia.
Precisely.
With the most sophisticated ion channels and signaling pathways.
The ones who could sense a predator lurking nearby, or a change in salt concentration, were more likely to survive and pass on their genes.
It's amazing how such tiny creatures have evolved such complex systems just to stay alive.
And it makes you wonder.
Right. It makes you think.
Are these sorts of electrical signaling systems unique to Paramecium?
Right.
Or are they more widespread?
That's a great question. Are there other microscopic organisms out there with their own electrical secrets?
While Paramecium is fantastic example.
Right.
They're certainly not alone in using electrical signals.
Wow.
Many other single-celled organisms, like amoebas and algae, also utilize ion channels and electrical signaling to interact with their environment.
There's a whole hidden world of electrical communication happening right under our noses.
And what's really intriguing is that this...
Right. Or microscopes, I guess, but yeah.
Widespread use of electrical signaling. Yeah.
In single-celled organisms raises some interesting questions about the evolutionary origins of nervous systems.
Whoa. You're saying that studying Paramecium could help us understand how our own brains evolved.
The fascinating possibility.
That's really cool.
The sophisticated electrical signaling we see in these tiny creatures suggests that the basic building blocks for nervous systems might have been present in ancient single-celled organisms long before multicellular animals appeared on the scene.
So by studying these simpler systems,
exactly,
we can gain insights into the fundamental principles
it's a beautiful example
of electrical signaling that are shared across all life forms from a single-celled paramecium.
Different branches of biology are interconnected.
To our own complex brains.
And how studying even the smallest creatures can lead to big discoveries.
Mind-blowing.
But before we get too lost in the grand scheme of evolution...
let's bring it back to Paramecium and those incredible electrical signals.
All right.
We've talked about how they help it avoid things.
Right.
But we haven't really discussed how those signals are actually generated.
Okay, that's a great point. We've been focusing on the what and the why. But now it's time to delve into...
You've been focusing on...
the how, the actual mechanism behind these electrical signals.
But now it's time to delve into the how.
Okay, I'm ready to get into the nitty-gritty.
All right, let's revisit those ion channels.
Of how this microscopic electrical wizardry works. Let's break it down.
The tiny gatekeepers that control the flow of ions across the cell membrane.
So these ion channels aren't just passively sitting there.
Right.
They're actively responding to the environment.
They are.
Opening and closing based on different stimuli.
Exactly. And that's what makes them so fascinating.
Okay.
They're like tiny molecular machines. Constantly sensing and reacting to the world around them. Think of it this way.
We're back diving deep into the world of Paramecium and their incredible abilities.
We've been unraveling the mysteries of how these single-celled organisms sense their surroundings and react to stimuli using electrical signals.
Yeah, it's like they have this whole microscopic sensory universe going on.
It is. It's amazing.
We've talked about how those signals help them avoid danger. But how do they actually generate those signals in the first place?
Okay, so think of it like this. Each ion channel is like a specialized doorway for different types of ions. Some doors swing open when they detect a change in voltage. Like a security gate responding to a key card.
So a change in the electrical charge around the cell
can
open these voltage-gated channels.
Exactly. And then you have other channels that are like pressure-sensitive doors. They spring open when something bumps into them, like those automatic doors at the grocery store.
Those are the mechanosensitive channels we talked about.
Precisely.
Right, the ones that help Paramecium detect obstacles.
Exactly.
Okay, cool.
And there are even channels that are like combination locks. Needing a specific chemical key to open them.
You mean like those ligand-gated channels that respond to specific molecules?
You got it.
Gotcha.
So depending on the type of stimulus, a change in voltage, a physical bump, or a specific chemical, different ion channels will open. Allowing ions to flow in or out of the cell.
And it's this flow of ions that creates the electrical currents.
Yes.
The language of Paramecium's nervous system.
That's the heart of it.
It's pretty wild.
It's this elegant interplay between different types of ion channels, each responding to specific cues that allows Paramecium to sense and react to its environment with such precision.
It's mind-blowing to think that something so small has such a sophisticated system for processing information.
I agree. It really is.
Speaking of survival, we focused a lot on how Paramecium avoids things. But what about how it finds what it needs? How does it know where to go for food or find a mate?
Well, just like with avoiding danger,
Right.
finding what it needs also relies on those incredible sensory abilities.
Okay.
And that rapid-fire electrical signaling system.
So it's using the same tools for both offense and defense.
Exactly.
Yeah.
For instance, remember how we talked about Paramecium being able to sense chemicals released by bacteria?
Yeah, it's like following a breadcrumb trail of delicious bacteria.
That's a great analogy.
Right.
It's called chemotaxis
Okay.
movement in response to a chemical gradient.
Right.
Paramecium will literally swim towards higher concentrations of those yummy bacteria,
Wow.
guided by its chemoreceptors.
So it's not just randomly bumping around, it's actually making deliberate movements based on chemical cues.
Exactly.
That's really cool.
And while we don't know all the details,
Yeah.
scientists believe that Paramecium might even use chemical signaling to find potential mates.
So even in the microscopic world, there's a little bit of romance going on.
It seems so. Oh, that's cute.
They might release specific chemicals,
Yeah.
almost like pheromones,
Okay.
to attract each other in the vastness of their watery world.
Wow, who knew there were so many parallels between our world and the world of Paramecium?
It's a reminder that the basic principles of life
It really is.
are often shared
Yeah.
across all organisms,
Right.
big and small.
This has been an incredible journey into the microscopic world of Paramecium.
I agree.
From paisley patterns to ion channels, action potentials, and even a touch of romance. It's amazing what we can learn from such a tiny creature.
It is a testament to the power of curiosity and the endless wonders that biology has to offer.
And it makes you wonder what other secrets are still hidden in the microscopic world, waiting to be discovered.
Absolutely. Every time we peer deeper into the lives of these tiny organisms,
Right.
we uncover new layers of complexity and ingenuity. So keep those microscopes handy, folks,
Well said.
and never underestimate the power of a single cell.
There's a whole universe of wonder
I love it.
waiting to be explored right in our own backyards.
And that's a wrap for the deep dive.
Thanks for listening.
We'll catch you next time for another fascinating exploration of the world around